In this episode of OG55, I am joined by Slimer and the Italiano. We talk all about Villains Land. Permits have been, well, released. I don't know how you would say that, but the permits are out there. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Villaintines Day, a cool little event done recently. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break down this whole Villains Land thing, talk about it, speculate up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. We are back talking all about villains. Before we do that, I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel. We got George, the Italiano. Where can everybody at home find you, George?
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You can also find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky under the Disney Italiano. And, of course, you can find me right here on my home base on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. We got the one and only Slimer in the house, looking sexy as always. Slimer, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me back.
Absolutely. Where can everybody find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on X at SlimeScore84. You can find me right here on Orange Grove 55.
There he is. All right, boys, let's go ahead and dive right in. First topic of the day, courtesy of Chip and Company. Disney Villains Land construction could start as early as next month at the Magic Kingdom. This is crazy. It says here, a recently obtained permit suggests that construction on the highly anticipated Disney Villains Land at Magic Kingdom could commence as early as March 1st. Okay, a permit uncovered by realtor Ken Pozak on a construction bidding site titled, quote, Disney Magic Kingdom expansion Villains Land, end quote, suggests that construction on the new land could begin as early as March 1st. The permit lists a budget between $25 million and $50 million. We'll talk about that. That's, I don't know, that seems a little low, but we'll talk about it. Though this is likely only for initial work as land clearing. Okay, absolutely. The total cost of the project, including ride shops and other structures, is expected to reach the hundreds of millions of dollars. The 14-acre expansion, a significant addition to Magic Kingdom's current 107 acres, will reportedly feature two major attractions with which the permit indicates will be a roller coaster and an indoor ride. Yeah, so the $50 million is just the initial land clearing. That does make sense. But Slimer, what are your overall thoughts on what we're reading here so far?
Well, with regard to when they're going to start work on this land, they're going to have to start it really soon because they don't have a lot of time to get this thing going. If they started in March, I don't think we're going to see any sort of actual physical construction. I think that's going to be a lot of preemptive staging. Then we're going to probably start seeing some physical construction more towards the third or fourth quarter of this year. But I really do hope that it is a 14-acre land. Wizard, our buddy Wizard, also says that he believes it is 14 acres as well. I know that we have speculated that it's closer to 7 to 8 acres. I think that Cars Land is speculated also to be about 7 or 8 acres. If you want to really get accurate about this, go see our friend DSNY Newscast. Jack over there is extremely detailed when it comes to these sorts of numbers and the land projects. But, here we like to speculate a little bit more, and we don't like to get into like the exact numbers. But let's say that it is 8 acres. I think that I share the concern with the guys also in this conversation that 8 acres doesn't shore up the same amount of excitement for me, considering that Batuu and Pandora both got 14 acres. So for my level of expectations to be met, I need to see a 14-acre land. This thing has to be really big and really immersive. And anything short of that, anything short of Batuu or Pandora size scale, just isn't going to do it for me. If this thing is according to Disney the biggest expansion and the best thing to ever come to the Magic Kingdom. So I'm really rooting for that 14 acres. I want to see Walt Disney Imagineering get as much land to play with, to really bring this thing to life and create that lived in immersive experience that you get when you go to Batu or when you go to Pandora, because anything less than that, I feel like just isn't going to meet the expectations of not just your fans, specifically your fans, but I think that could even leave general audiences wanting a little bit more if they split, 8 and 8 or 7 and 7, let's say, between Cars and Villains Land.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you release artwork like this, okay, this artwork, let me see if I can blow it up. Let me see. Yep, there we go. Okay, perfect. So when you have artwork like this, where it gives you and I know it's concept art, everyone at home, I understand that, but it gives the illusion of like, this is a big freaking land here. You know what I'm saying? This is a massive, massive piece of property, and you're going to really get immersed in this area. This looks like every bit as big as Batu that we saw from Batu's concept art. So if they come in here and give us a 7-acre land, that ain't good, guys. That ain't good. Now, I am hopeful it will be 14 acres and or at least close. I mean, if we do 12 or 13 even, that's fine. But you need some room here. You have 2 attractions. You have an indoor ride, which we assume is going to be a massive indoor e-ticket, right? And then you have a roller coaster. You need some room to work. 7 acres just ain't enough, in my opinion. So I'm very optimistic. I do believe it will be closer to 14 than the 7, but you never know. What do you think, George?
Yeah, for me, I don't want anything less than what is proposing here, which would be 14 acres. Disney Imagineer, Bruce Vaughn had mentioned briefly during last Destination D23 that, the project before it was officially announced as Villains and Cars, that the Beyond Big Thunder was going to be a project that was going to be very significant, and it was going to be, tied to a Galaxy's Edge, Pandora kind of style, kind of expansion, the biggest in Magic Kingdom history. So when you're saying stuff like that and you're expanding the park out more, like, you need something on a grand scale, and especially since you're dealing with the Disney villains, a topic that Disney fans had been wanting for decades, and kind of going back even to D20, the D23 Expo in 2022. I was there when they did their, at the time, it was like the Blue Sky kind of pitch to kind of see like how the fans would react. And when they brought up Villains, like the whole entire arena erupted, and there was very little significant concept art. But they took that reaction, they took that data, and they gave us the piece of artwork right now for the last D23 this last August, and gave us what we were just looking at because of the data that they were trying to see, like what people would accept or not. So the fact that it was all building up to this point, I can't foresee them like shoehorning in a Villains land into a 7 or 8 acre plot.
And I want to kind of give another example of why they can't do a 7-acre plot. So I just Googled really quickly while George was saying his thing here, but Diagon Alley at Universal Studios has a 20-acre plot of land. And it offers about 2.5 times the pedestrian space because it doesn't have any outdoor roller coasters.
Interesting.
So when you think about how much land they've allotted for Diagon Alley, and this thing ends up being a third of that,
it's not enough. Yeah,
if we were to do 14 acres, and they even said one of the major attractions is going to be a roller coaster, that alone is going to take up how many acreage of the 14?
Right. Yeah. Then that big e-ticket, I'm assuming it's going to be like some indoor thing like Mickey and Minnie's, which you're going to have some real estate for that, I'm sure. Whether it's a trackless ride or something along those lines, you're going to have some room for this stuff, And
also, too, this is coming off of the back of Epic Universe's Dark Universe. We've seen what Universal can do with their IP, kind of like a horror kind of dark area and those audio animatronics that they have with like the creature of the Black Lagoon and the werewolf and Dracula and Frankenstein. I mean, like those are some massive detailed audio animatronics. And then when you take IP such as the Disney villains, where people can recognize and know, like to be on that grand scale, we need something big. And I want, and that kind of worried me a little bit, even when Bruce Vaughn said on kind of like a scale of Galaxy's Edge, because Galaxy's Edge is massive. It's very detailed. It's very aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
Right.
But as I've said many times before on this channel, you have no meat and potatoes in that boiling pot. It's like there's nothing there, and I hope they have to make a home run with villains. They cannot give us an aesthetically pleasing land with nothing going on.
Well, yeah, Galaxy's Edge is a giant mansion with no furniture and nothing on the wall. It's big, it's nice. Oh wow, you know, but there's nothing there. There's no. It's a house, not a home, basically, right?
Nothing in Bapu.
Bapu.
Well,
Yeah.
and this is where it becomes like really curious for me as to whether they're going to go for another indoor attraction to maximize pedestrian space, because that's what they've done so far with Diagon Alley. That was probably the newest example of that, right? Because that was the first time that we got a land that's like truly lived in immersive, at least at that scale. So all indoor attractions, so that way they can, one, keep the rides out of sight from the pedestrians, so it doesn't seem like you're going on a ride per se, right? I mean, the only reason that they did Hagrid's outdoors is because they had to replace Dueling Dragons. But even then, Hagrid's is really out of view from Hogsmeade as well. I mean, it really isn't until you get behind that wall as you're going into the ride that you actually see Hagrid's. And then even with the Forbidden Journey, right? That's also an indoor attraction. So modern theme park land development seems to be taking the position that if you want to create a lived-in experience or lived-in land as much as possible and make it as realistic as possible, you have to take the indoor attraction approach, even if it's a roller coaster, and then try to, one, to keep the realism, to keep the immersion, but then two, also to maximize pedestrian space and the amount of shops and dining and drinking locations that you're going to have along the area. So even though in the concept art they show an outdoor roller coaster, I don't think that it's, yeah, you can kind of see it over here on the left-hand side, that outdoor roller coaster. I don't think that it's a given that it's going to be an outdoor roller coaster unless they take the Hagrid's approach, where you have to get behind some rock work, you know, it's kind of hidden. And then the roller coaster is outside once you get into the ride queue area. So that's one way they could do the roller coaster. With regard to, the indoor attraction ride, obviously that's going to be indoors. But how they approach this roller coaster, I think, is going to be really curious. But if there's any indication, all you got to do is just look at modern theme park Imagineering, and it'll tell you that it's most likely going to be inside, or it's going to be hidden behind some structure that's going to have a reveal, but then hides it from the main area. So in other words, it's not going to be like the Hulk, where it's winding and weaving through the land. I don't think we're going to get that, because that's going to take away from the ambiance of the park. And it's also, that's 20th century theme park Imagineering, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was one of my critiques actually of Dark Universe. That was my only critique of Dark Universe, was that the metal coaster kind of going through the land. I think that I agree with you. I don't like that stuff. I would hope it is more discreet. Like here underneath here, where it goes underneath this little kind of cavern with the waterfalls and stuff. Keep it in places like that. I'm totally cool with it, but I don't want it just careening through the land. I want this land to feel really, really, really organic, So yeah, we'll see. George, any final thoughts before we move on to our next villainous topic?
I find it interesting too, like when they kind of made this announcement, so to speak, that the documentation was uncovered, that it's possible all this can start March 1st. But the more that we talk about it, of like saying like clearing land and getting everything like prepped and prepared for the actual construction, would lead me to believe that as it gets closer to the summertime, that we would get the actual official confirmation announced by Disney at Destination D23 that's going to be held at Walt Disney World at the end of this upcoming August. So it seems like the timing for everything is kind of moving in that direction. So I wouldn't be surprised that we should be hearing a lot more specific details on villains this upcoming summer.
Yeah, we have to be, because if this thing is going to break ground next month, I don't know about March 1st. I mean, theoretically it could with the permit, I guess, but probably not though. Let's be realistic. Probably not. It's probably going to be into March a little bit. But if it breaks ground in March, the Destination D isn't until what? August?
August.
Yeah, so April, May, June, July. You're talking 4 months, four and a half months. They got to give you something for Villains Land. And then you're talking in August. Not only is it 4 months into the construction, it's also a year away from the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you better give us something. I mean, if they don't give you any Villains Land stuff at Destination D, I mean, Josh dropped the ball. I mean, 100%.
I think Drew is right. In the last video that you guys did with Drew, where you guys talked over quite a few topics, actually, he was saying that they need to bring back, and you had mentioned it as well, and I'm sure George, of course, agrees, that they need to bring back the tradition that Walt Disney established back in the 1960s and 1950s of how he would discuss the projects that Imagineers were working on. And that way they keep the guests and people, kind of in the loop as far as like how far along projects are going, what the Imagineers are doing to come up with solutions to problems, the kind of creative development that's involved in picking out land, where they're going to different countries to get inspiration for food. This is the kind of stuff that Disney's tradition, not just the traditions, but I would say that just the Disney brand itself is built on these. So they need to keep that bloodline going. And you're right. They need to come to Destination D23 probably with I would imagine 30 minutes of footage of what they've been working on, from concept to breaking ground to everything they have going on right now behind the scenes to actual construction over there, and drop a 30-minute or 15-minute, hey, this is what's going on with Imagineers while we try to bring this Villains Land Villains Land to real life. Yeah.
No, well said. Yeah, we need some meat right now. Some meat and potatoes, as George calls it, right? For that Destination D event, we need something. I also think something for Anaheim. They need to give us something, whether it be Pandora, where the hell is that going in DCA? How are they going to fit that thing in there? And also Coco, the boat ride.
I think for Pandora and Coco, I think we might get something sooner than Destination D23, and I think that would have a lot to do with the
trailer,
the Walt show that's going to be outside. After you leave the show, they're going to have the little kind of what's going to go on for the future of Disneyland forward. I think that's probably going to give us our first key into Pandora and Coco.
I got a really good idea.
What's that?
What if they can program the Walt Disney animatronic to talk about future Disneyland, Disney World, international parks projects?
That would be cool. And the fans would probably have a fit over that, because you'd have to do AI voicing.
I know, but that would be so great.
That would be cool,
because it'd be Walt Disney bringing you what the Disney company is working on again.
Yeah,
just like it was, just like in the 50s. That to me would be great. I could get over the fact they'd be using AI to replicate his voice, but it'd be the man bringing you the projects that Disney's bringing to life.
Yeah, and no one, honestly, those old Walt specials where he was showing the model for Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff, and there's the biggest bargain of all, he was so good. And and who is the ambassador? Julie, I know George knows this stuff. What was the
Julie
ambassador?
Andrews?
No, she was the Disneyland ambassador, the first one. Is it Julie Riem?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He took her on the tour into WDI.
Yeah, I forgot the gal's name. I do apologize.
I don't.
First Disneyland ambassador. It was like Julie Ram, I believe. Everyone at home was probably like screaming at the screen right now, like, Joji, how do you not know this?
Play There's the Biggest Bargain of Them All drop. We haven't heard that one in a while.
Oh yeah, we'll do that right now while we wait for George. Here we go. Hold on.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
There he is, the man himself.
Julie Ram Casaletto.
There it is. Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad I got that right. I wasn't 100% sure with the last name, but yeah. I mean, that was such a great. I mean, no one got you hyped like Walt with that stuff, you know. So
you know what's funny is I remember watching them as a kid and getting hyped for the attractions, even though they had already been open for like 30 years by the time that I was old enough to getting hyped for attractions built 30 years ago. I was like, this is great. So
yeah. Oh, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Build the hype.
Exactly. Disney needs to do more of that kind of stuff, you know. Even Eisner, I thought Eisner did a great job doing, you know, the behind the scenes stuff. He did it with the parks, but even the films. I remember buying the big box sets to all the Renaissance era films, and they had the making of VHS in with the movie, you know.
Eisner really understood the Disney company, and he understood that doing that was very organic to the tradition of the relationship between the company and its fans, particularly its theme park fans, which is why he doubled down on it. I think he did it more than Walt. I mean, had Walt been alive a little bit longer, I'm sure we would have got more of that. But I mean, Eisner was always in front of the camera.
Oh yeah, he was great. Now we love it as fans. Now I've made the argument. I'm not so sure Walt would have loved it for Eisner because it was. This is my name is on that building, Eisner, not yours. You know, I don't know how Walt would have been like. Would he have been okay with someone stepping into the Uncle Walt routine? Would he have liked it because it's an homage and they're continuing the legacy, or would Walt be like, no one does that but me? I don't know. But as fans, I thought it was fantastic. As a fan, I loved it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. But interesting conversation though, for sure. But that brings us to our next story with more villains. This is courtesy of All Ears. A rare event is happening now at Disney's Hollywood Studios. It's Villaintines Day. Great name, by the way. Really, really clever. At Disney's Hollywood Studios. What is Villaintines Day, you may ask? Why? It's a gathering of all the biggest and baddest Disney villains. Come with us to celebrate the occasion. Okay, and it says here, we weren't sure if our invitation got lost in the mail. We know how you feel, Maleficent, but Disney never seemed to formally announce Villaintines Day 2025, so we weren't sure if it was happening again this year. Those villains can be sneaky. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know it was even a thing before. They were saying again. These meet and greets were not advertised on the My Disney Experience app, so it's more of a pop-up surprise and delight situation. Now, Slimer, what are your thoughts on this being a pop-up, not announced? Why are they doing this? Why wouldn't Disney announce this?
Yeah, it's kind of a coincidence that they're coming out with all this villain stuff, and then they drop a pop-up Valentine's Day event with meet and greets with Jafar, Cruella, the Queen, right? Very, very indicative of a sanitized. I don't want to say a poll, but if I wanted to gather information as to which guests were the most or which villains were the most popular with guests, and I didn't want it to, and I wouldn't have like a controlled test, I wouldn't tell anybody. Like I wouldn't want any of the Orlando locals or people that were specifically fans of villains specifically to come to this event knowingly. I'd want to get an aggregate of data that is sanitized as possible. In other words, it is not tainted by a specific villain liking demographic. I'd want to get it from the general audience as much as possible. And this is going on just for the weekend. I think it ends on the 16th or the 15th. But I think that this is Disney really locking in that, making sure they have the right villains, not just for the villain show that's coming for Hollywood Studios, but potentially for Villains Land. They could already have the villains picked out. And if you go down a little bit more, I think it shows the Villaintines Day cards that they were giving out to guests. But it it's let me give you the other link. Here we go. Is that the blog Mickey one? No, here we are. Here's the Mickey blog one.
Perfect.
Boop,
Perfect.
boop, boop, boop. Here you go.
Thank you, sir.
But they were actually handing out Villaintines Day cards, and on it they have the 6 villains that were walking around doing meet and greets, killing puppies.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah,
So these are
and if you scroll down, you can see the cards they're giving out.
cool.
Yeah, there we go. Look at that.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So this the villains are going with Villains Land. I think there was even a hint of this at the D23 Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, right, George? They had like a big what was it like? It was like an art piece with like a bunch of villains on there. I think Scar was missing though on that one, wasn't he?
Yes, Scar was not present.
Now that would be the only critique I would have if that graphic from D23 Brazil is like the definitive list. You gotta have Scar in there, man. Like he is like the quintessential Disney baddie, you know? I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see. You know, we have baddies here on the channel.
Thank you for watching OG55. If you are
We got baddies here too, but you know, we love Scar. You got to have Scar in this land, I think. But I don't know. Maybe there won't be. I think a Scar steakhouse would be fucking amazing, dude. Like that would be awesome. You know, like a steakhouse. I mean, come on, that's perfect for like a line. I don't know, but we'll see. But what say you, George?
Yeah, Elephant Graveyard Steakhouse. That's what. Yeah, because it's like the play on, you know, like where Scar brings like the zebra leg to the hyenas. Like it's
Right.
like, come on, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like it seems like that's the route. Like between with Jafar, Captain Hook, Cruella de Vil, obviously Maleficent, the Evil Queen. You know, they keep on showcasing these Hades, like these villains. Into for the stage show that's going to Hollywood Studios in this pop-up Villaintines Day, or with if that was that is that what it was called?
Yeah, Villaintines.
Like a pop-up, and then of course, you know, with the latest kind of breaking news, so to speak, not from Disney, but like just that, you know, the possibility of starting construction on Villains Land. And I feel, you know, this all isn't a coincidence, you know. And Slimer, you asked before we started the show, do you think that Disney could possibly have already picked out the villains? And honestly, I would think so. I think they already have the villains in mind, because I feel like these particular villains are going to play a major role in the what we're thinking is like the major e-ticket dark ride. And I think honestly, to have massive technological detailed audio animatronics of these villains, I mean, that would blow us all out of the park with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Disney has to deliver with this Villains Land for sure, though. It does. I mean, you have to really look, like we said, you know, Universal's doing a great job with their Dark Universe. We've had nothing but good things to say about Dark Universe, you know, very little critique with that. I think they're handling it perfectly. Disney needs to do that with their villains. Like, just do that, Disney, but with your villains, and you're fine. Don't go in there like George says and sugarcoat it, or what do you call it, George? Candy crush it, right?
Candy crush it. Yep.
Yeah, you want to do that. You want to make sure it's creepy. Yeah, obviously, you don't want to have like HHN level scares. I mean, obviously, it's Magic Kingdom, but you want a creepiness to it, an uncomfortableness to it.
And notice they picked out villains which thematically fit into the Magic Kingdom. They also didn't pick any villains that are part of the modern age of Disney, which is also interesting as well. Even though a lot of those modern age Disney movies have brought in more money. You know, take, you know, Frozen, for example, or you can take Moana. Any Disney movie that came out after the 2000s has brought in more money, even when adjusted for inflation, than the Disney villains that they chose for not just the villain show and Valentine's Day. But I think that this is the villains that we're going to get for Villains Land as well. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of probably some accurate predictions you can predict in terms of like what the land is going to look like, what the rides are going to be based off of. stores and restaurants based off of these characters here. And
Yeah.
unlike Batu, where they picked the latest and the greatest characters of the Star Wars universe, Disney is really going strong on what is just generally the most popular with the general audience and playing it safe, as opposed to what they did with Star Wars, which is, just focusing on one era, which is the Last Jedi sequel, or they call it the sequel era, right? Here, they're not limiting it to any era. It's the villains across, Disney animated series. And I think that that's a smart move. I think that that's what people want. I think they already know the villains, that the villains that they're going to incorporate into Villains Land. And there's a lot we can try to predict based off of that. Now, why they pick these villains for Valentine's Day and why they even threw this event to begin with, maybe just to kind of, warm people up for the villain show that's coming out later this year. But we already know from the artwork that they released not too long ago that the same villains of Valentine's Day are going to be the main characters in this villain show. And story-wise, they might have the most chemistry, just their backgrounds, how they interact with each other, everything from the way they look to their voices, to like their villainous goals, right? So there's a chemistry there, and there's definitely a story that maybe that WDI has already created for these characters that just works better with this combination of villains versus any other combination that's going to be
you're right.
Story in Villains Land.
No, you're absolutely right, Slimmer. And really, you want this land to be the dark, twisted version of Fantasyland. I mean, ideally, that's what you want. You're going to want to have like the more fairy tale leaning villains, Maleficent, and I know Peter Pan isn't technically a fairy tale, but it's very storybooky. So that's kind of like what you want to go for. Also, there's a lot of upcharge. I know fans are going to kill me for saying this, but there's a lot of upcharge opportunity in Villains Land. You can have rare characters like the Horned King from Black Cauldron show up maybe for Halloween or something like that. That would be buco bucks for Disney. So, you can do a lot of cool special events for like Halloween time and things like that. That would really be huge money makers for them. So this land is going to be the gift that keeps on giving for Disney. Go ahead, George. I know you want to say something.
Yeah, well, and also what you guys were talking about, like with the storyline as well, of like how cohesive like these particular villains would kind of like play off and work together in that sense. But OG, you had mentioned something like way back of how like when they, after the fact, they announced villains at D23 and also released concept art for the villain show, is two of those projects have something in common, and it's centered around the Magic Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Magic Mirror was like the introductory of announcing Villains Land, and it showcases that in the storyline of the show that the Magic Mirror is going to be kind of like a portal,
Right.
for the villains to kind of get together. So
Mm-hmm.
as you kind of predicted, OG, like I can definitely see the Magic Mirror playing a big part in the land itself, or in like one of the major attractions such as the dark ride. But I also wanted to mention too, not just with the attractions, not just with the shops, not just with the restaurants, but I really hope that with the aesthetic ambiance of the land itself, that they really incorporate specialties in this land. Like for instance, like what they're doing now with Galaxy's Edge over at Disneyland, where they're tying into a night show with the fireworks, but in the angle of Star Wars. I would love to see that happen at Villains Land while the fireworks are going off and you're watching Happily Ever After on Main Street. If you're over in Villains Land, you're getting a whole different interpretation of the fireworks show based on of the villains. Like to me, that would be really cool. And I know Disney, I know you listen, especially to me. So definitely hear this out. I know you're probably not thinking about it, but I would love to see a gigantic bald mountain as part of the centerpiece. I know Maleficent's Forbidden Mountain is probably going to be the main centerpiece, but I still would love to see a bald mountain and have a gigantic audio animatronic Chernabog that during the day, it's enclosed. So the wings are shut. So basically, if there's any inclement weather, the audio animatronic is protected, it's secured. Then at night, if weather permitting, they bring up the music from Night on Bald Mountain. You have the projections go off on the mountain with all the spirits coming up and rising, and then the wings open, and there you have that gigantic audio animatronic of Chernobog. I mean, that alone for me is worth going into Villains Land.
And then can you imagine walking into Villains Land and hearing this audio?
Apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
I mean, such a bad guy, such a villain. You know, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps.
Apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
Oh, God.
It's Chernobob with Bob Chapek's face.
Or Chernobob. There we go. Chernobob.
But
fantastic.
George, I really like that idea, and you said it before, but I feel like not executing that would be a big mistake, especially with drone technology. Now you could have the drone simulating the ghouls and ghosts and spirits, and they could circulate and twist around Chernobog and fly over obviously they can't fly over the crowd, but because they have to fly over like a space area. But when it comes to the expectations of Villains Land and where Magic Kingdom needs to be after Epic Universe, Magic Kingdom needs to remain at least on this coast, because we all know Disneyland is the best coast, right? West Coast is the best coast.
Oh yeah, hold on. You said it. So we got to play it.
I ain't got nothing to say but West Side.
Exactly. But Magic Kingdom has to remain the undisputed park in the entire world when it comes to attendance, but absolutely definitely here in Orlando. Like, there can't be any question. Even after Epic Universe, like, it still needs to say, hey, look, we're still here. Not only are we still here, but when it comes to storytelling and immersion and, that magical experience, there is no other park that can do it like Magic Kingdom.
100%.
Beyond what Spectrum Magic can bring, or the new nighttime parade they're going to do, right? Like, it has to be beyond that, because even though they have the fireworks show Happily Ever After, that's fantastic. They're going to have the new nighttime parade, that's going to be amazing. Villains Land has to be otherworldly, and I think that's what they have to capture, is that otherworldly, fantastical experience, and it has to, like I said, it has to make that statement. We're still the best park in the world, and we're still the reason that more people come to us than any other park.
Well said. Absolutely. This is really I think Villains Land with this new Cars Land is really going to solidify Magic Kingdom as its own thing. It's finally going to step out of the shadows of being like Diet Disneyland. It's getting its own identity more now, which I think is really what it needs. I do think it had that Diet Disneyland vibe way too much in 1971.
Disneyland Zero.
Disneyland Zero, exactly. Live action Disneyland, but it's getting into its own now, and this is really what it needed. I said the same thing with Tower of Terror out here in California. Our Tower of Terror was always seen as the diet version compared to Florida. Florida always had the better one, but once it became Mission Breakout, it got its own vibe, its own energy. It's its own thing now. You don't see those comparisons anymore, right? Because it's its own entity, and Magic Kingdom is going in that direction. It's becoming its own thing. There's no Rivers of America now. That alone separates it from Disneyland. I think it's a good thing. I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for saying that, but it's a good thing. You want these places to be different. I mean, why do I want to go to Magic Kingdom to get a lighter version of what I got here? I want to go to Magic Kingdom so I get something completely different, something completely unique. Because Magic Kingdom, really, my first time in Florida, that was the weakest for me of all the parks. And I think it's because I'm so used to Disneyland. Like, Slimer, you were out here in August, and I remember you were like blown away by Disneyland. You were like, oh, geez, Louise, this is crazy.
Yeah. Every time I go to Disneyland, it's just a reminder of how much of a superior park it is over the Magic Kingdom. And there are aspects of the Magic Kingdom which I do consider better. Population flow is one of them. It's a lot bigger, so there's a lot more place, room to walk and things like that. But aside from like the scale of the Magic Kingdom, the scale of the castle, Disneyland just has a charm to it you just can't capture at the Magic Kingdom. Now, maybe maybe that Disneyland Paris has the same charm, and maybe Tokyo Disneyland does as well. But I mean, here in the United States, as far as like places that I can go to without getting into an exuberant amount of spending to travel internationally, yeah, it's the best. But I wanted, while I had you guys, I wanted to ask y'all what you guys thought about the attraction ideas video and his analysis on what it is about Hollywood studios that continues to, what is it about it that they invest money into it and then attendance spikes and then it dips. And Animal Kingdom seems to have the same flaw where it doesn't matter what they bring to it, they'll have a spike of attendance for a year, 2, 3 years, and then that attendance just flatlines, not just in comparison to Epcot and Magic Kingdom, but also to Universal's parks. And what do they need to do to give it that extra spice to make sure that attendance gets up and stays up?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Animal Kingdom, I'm a weird kind of guy when it comes to theme parks because I think Animal Kingdom is like almost perfect for me because I like I'm a vibes over rides guy. So for me, I mean, what Animal Kingdom offers, vibes like times 1,000. So it's like, okay, this is good enough for me. I can walk around, I can chill, I can enjoy, I can soak in the ambiance. I love Animal Kingdom. But with Hollywood Studios, I think the biggest problem with that, if we're looking for like the normies, right? I was talking to George. We did a video on this, the attraction ideas video. It was like a reaction video. It'll drop pretty soon. One of the biggest problems with Hollywood is that there's not a whole lot of everyone rides. It sort of suffers from a lot of the same critiques I have about Universal. It's a lot of fast stuff. All their big rides are fast. I mean, except for Mickey and Minnie's, basically. But you have Hollywood Tower Hotel, which is a thrill ride. Rock and Roller Coaster, thrill ride. You're getting another coaster with monsters. It's a lot of fast rides, and I think they just need to get into more like stuff like on par with like a Pirates or a Haunted Mansion. People eating like really just 8 to 80 kind of rides, and they're lacking severely in that department. I think that's, if I was running the show, that would be the one thing that I would really put a focus on. And attraction ideas had a great point. The new additions coming in like Monstropolis doesn't address some of these core issues, and that's one of the core issues with that. Monstropolis is again another roller coaster, and then the Muppets are going into Rock and Roller Coaster, which is yet another roller coaster. We need something for the whole family. You know what I'm saying? What say you, George?
So for me, yeah, kind of going off what you were saying, OG, I feel like if you compare what all the international parks are getting, they're getting these immersive, technological, advanced attractions. You look at Frozen, you look at Tangled, you look at Peter Pan, for the over in Tokyo, you have even though it's a water ride and everything, like you have the Lion King going over in Paris. They're doing a whole revamp of the Walt Disney Studios to Adventure World. And I think honestly, the direction that Paris is going, that should be the direction that the
Hollywood
US parks should consider, because I've said it before, when you have a park that was dedicated as a studio park, to pull back the curtain, go behind the scenes, show you the movie making process, how film, television, all works. No one is into that anymore. That was like a 1980s, 1990s kind of thing. People just want immersive experiences, and I feel like that's what hurts Hollywood studios. That's what hurt Walt Disney Studios in Paris. That's why it's becoming Adventure World. And I even think that's why it's even hurting Universal Studios. Even to out here at Universal Hollywood, even though it was a movie making studio, it's still a movie making studio. That's where I can kind of get the
give it a pass.
Yeah. So, but like even to now, they're still trying to, they're adding the Fast and the Furious coaster. They're adding a hotel. They're adding these events with like for Back to the Future and Dungeons and Dragons. Like they're adding stuff to try to fill in, like not it just being a studio park. So I feel like with Hollywood Studios, yes, even though you're adding a new land, Monsters Inc. It's going to be great with Harryhausen's, the restaurant, the e-ticket door vault coaster. That's going to be great. Yeah, as Attractions Ideas was saying, that it's not fixing the problem, and I feel like the whole park is still having an identity crisis, and it needs to just kind of like get a whole revamp, not just with one land. I feel like the whole park just needs a change.
The Adventure World model is a great one. You know, you want these Hollywood parks should be more about experiencing the worlds of these Hollywood films, you know? So that's the way to go. And same with DCA, you know, call it Disney Cinematic Adventure. I've said it so many times. And then you can have Pandora in there and it makes sense. You can even put Moana in there and it would make sense, you know? So, and I think that might be the kind of the blueprint going forward for a lot of these parks, because we've seen it with Adventure World in Paris. So Hollywood Studios might get a similar approach, and same goes for DCA. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. Hopefully, hopefully they come up with better names though than Adventure World. I hate that name.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of Beverly Hills Cop 3. Like that park. Like it was like just it seems kind of generic. Like have something like a little bit more like Disney-fied, but has like some pizzazz.
It's very Wally World kind of, right? It's
yeah.
A little, yeah.
And where was I? Where was I going with this?
Pizza Rizzo's.
But like even like that's what I was gonna say. Like back in, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. If it was like 2007, 2008, it was no, it was after that, I think, where Iger even said that Hollywood Studios was supposed to already get a different name. It was supposed to change. Like it was mentioned at like the Q&A, and it never changed. So even back in the day, like they were talking about changing the name. Why? Because it's not a working studio anymore. So like, why call it Studios?
Right.
And you have like everything kind of all over the place. You have Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway inside Grauman's Chinese Theater, which I get, like it's like, okay, a world premiere of a Mickey short, but I'm like, okay. You have Monstropolis that's coming in. Then you have Sunset Boulevard that has the Twilight Zone, and then right next to it now is going to be Muppets. And then you have Toy Story Land that then runs into Galaxy's Edge. It's like everything. Then you have Indiana Jones. And then you have another Star Wars that's not even part of Galaxy's Edge. It's like everything's just like all over the place.
Well, that's why I really wanted it to become the Wonderful Worlds of Disney. You know, like that kind of park where you have a whole area with all the Pixar stuff. You have a whole area with, if you can swing it, a whole area with Marvel. You know, whole area with Disney Animation, a whole area for Lucasfilm. So you have all these studios of the Walt Disney Company in their own individual areas, and it's a celebration. And Fox, even you can put Fox in there. Exactly. So it's a celebration of every studio under the Walt Disney Company umbrella. But each studio has these immersive worlds in it. I think that'd be a really great direction for this park to go in. Cause like you were saying, George, the whole behind the scenes backlot stuff was a trend in the 80s and 90s. It's no longer a thing. Even Universal isn't embracing that stuff anymore. You know, and that was really the whole point of building Hollywood Studios, was to do it in it was Eisner trying to one up Universal, building their version of a studio park, because they heard that Universal was building one out there, right? That was the whole thing. But Universal's not even doing it anymore. I would just go that route, the Worlds of Disney or something like that. You know, same with DCA.
I think that's a good long-term solution. In the short term, you know what I think Hollywood Studios can do, really? I mean, obviously they're going to go through with this Monsters Inc. thing, and you're going to see attendance spike for, you know, a year or two, and, you know, maybe a little bit longer. But Hollywood Studios really lacks an evening show, whether it's a parade or whether it's something more spectacular than what they're doing currently at Grauman's Chinese Theater, which isn't bad. But the nighttime evening shows are not anything to really write home about, which doesn't leave you with a very memorable experience, like what you get at, you know, like when you go watch Happily Ever After, or when you go watch Luminous. I think that in the short term, Hollywood Studios can benefit from a really fantastic evening show. What that would look like, I don't know. You know, maybe it's, you know, an evening show over at Batu. and so, as you know, in addition
Right.
to what they have over at Man's Chinese Theater. But yeah, it's missing that, like you call it, the kiss goodnight. It doesn't have. I mean, it kind of has it. It's just not. It's just not up here.
Yeah.
And this is 2025, where Universal is trying to elevate the experience to Disney level, and Disney has to elevate the experience even higher. Like, you can't play by 2010 rules anymore.
No, you can't. And Fantasmic is in Hollywood Studios. That's a nighttime show. But again, if you watch Disneyland's version, there's no comparison. And I just feel like the whole, and I might be in the minority here, but I don't like the whole like Shamu bleacher thing, where we all sit on the bleachers and watch it. I think part of the magic of Fantasmic at Disneyland is that it erupts in the park itself. The park that you walked on and enjoyed during the day becomes the stage. I think that's part of the magic. I know it sounds really cheesy, but I think that's part of the cool factor of that show. When you walk into like a stadium, it's a show from the minute you walk in. You know what I'm saying? It just takes away from that organic kind of vibe. And then the show itself, I just don't think it's really up to par. You don't have the Columbia ship or the Mark Twain either. They're like, so yeah, I would agree with you, Slimer. That park needs a really impressive good night kiss, something that really blow people away. Go ahead, George.
And I think also too, and even going off of that with Animal Kingdom, that was one of the main reasons why they were putting in Pandora. You know, at night you would have the bioluminescent forest, and then the Tree of Life gets its projection show, and then they had the Rivers of Light show. So there was like a lot of nighttime activity that was happening in Animal Kingdom. Now they took all that out, you know, for the purposes possibly for like obviously for the animals, but it's hurting the park in the long run because the park is closing before sunset. There's not enough to do in the park as it is now. For OG, that's a completely different story because he loves like the vibes over the rides.
Right.
But for a family coming in with kids, you know, you're going into a park that has 7 rides and it closes at 7 p.m.
Right.
So it's like no matter now that might change a bit now with Tropical Americas, because with the popularity with Encanto and Indiana Jones,
Yeah,
I can't foresee them closing the park at like 7 p.m. And if they do, that's some bad showmanship on Disney's part, because you're feeding people excitement to go into these parks, but you're closing the park down early. It's like, why? There has to be some sort of solution where you can protect the animals,
right,
and still have a running, working theme park.
It's not good show when you have Pennsylvanians walking in there and everything is shut down. You know what I'm saying? It's just not good show. George has been in Cali since what? December 29th? 30th. And it's what, February 16th at the time of this recording. You still got that accent, brother.
Yeah. Just one time actually, when we were staying in Anaheim, I did actually use a California, like I said,
out.
Yeah, I said out. And Abby like kept on repeating it to me. And I was like, yeah, out. And she said, yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, I lost it.
But it's usually you're like out.
Yeah. Tan. And then of course you like my infamous hot dog.
Yeah, hot dog. Wow, you put so much extra on that one. You know what I'm saying? It's great. You put some mustard on that hot dog.
Mustard on the beat, ho.
All right, Mr. Italiano, where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base on Orange Grove 55, the Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is, and the one, the only Slimer. Slimer, where can everybody find you on social media, sir?
Yeah, you guys can find him on X at Slime Square 84. You can find me right here on Orange Grove 55.
There he is. Everybody comment down below with all your thoughts on Villains Land permits being filed. Villaintines Day unannounced event. Your thoughts on the Hollywood Studios conversation we had today. Anything you want to discuss in the comments down below. We would love to. Chair and a Bob, exactly. Chair and a Bob.
Hot dogs.
What was that?
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs with a little mustard on them.
Aye. Mustard on the beat, ho.
Comment down below. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for watching OG55. If you aren't already, consider becoming a member today.